Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what is known as the Access Fellow here at Jesus College at the University of Oxford. Now, a couple of years ago, I posted a video on this channel about my experience of being rejected by the universities of Cambridge and Oxford before then going on to study for my master's and doctorate here in Oxford and becoming ultimately a tutor. In that video, I was pretty hesitant in admitting to the world that I had been rejected by those universities. I found it honestly quite embarrassing. And in this video, with some time to reflect, I'm going to take a step further and not just say that I should have confessed these things, that I wasn't successful in my applications, but actually anyone who applies to universities like Oxford or Cambridge, regardless of the result, should be proud of themselves. That being an Oxbridge reject should be a source of pride, not a source of embarrassment, pain, anguish, or shame, or any of those sorts of things. Now, I'll explain why in a minute, but I think you deserve a slightly sort of bigger picture notion of what I'm trying to do with this channel, which is basically to encourage more people to apply. We want to get the best students into Oxford. Oxford has historically underrepresented people from certain backgrounds. We want to change that because if we're going to solve some of the worst problems of the future, and if we're going to do so fairly, we need the best people to come to this university, and that means lots of people applying. But if I encourage lots of people to apply, that means by sort of logical necessity that I'm going to encourage more people to be rejected. But I'm not a sadist. I'm not trying to encourage people to be disappointed. But I really think that applying to a university like Oxford or Cambridge can help you grow enormously as a person, and it is something that you should be very proud of regardless of what the result is, and I genuinely believe that. But let's quickly go through the most common reactions to being unsuccessful in an application to a university like Oxford. So there are, broadly speaking, three. The first of which is, it was all my fault. I was to blame. And that was my personal reaction when I received the letter from Cambridge as a teenager that I hadn't been successful. So it must have been me, I must have done something wrong, I must have been inadequate here, there and everywhere. The second most common reaction, albeit less common, is it's all the university's fault. The university has it in for me, they have some particular policy against me, they are discriminating against me. The third most common reaction is it's not really anyone's fault, it was just a competitive process. So let me go through those three reactions one by one. So the first reaction is, it was all me, it was all my fault. Well, actually, there's very little that the applicant can fully control other than the decision to apply. So that idea that it's all your fault is inaccurate. And with the benefit of hindsight, looking at my own application to Cambridge as a teenager, I mean, sure, I probably could have done some things differently, but given the information and skills I had at the time, I didn't do things differently. So going back and blaming my past self for all of these errors is kind of pointless. And now, knowing what I know as an admissions tutor, I know how many sort of fine margins it comes down to picking between candidates. It's not like we pick between good and bad candidates. We're picking between good, very good and sort of very, very good candidates, but based on the particular criteria we're using in the admissions process, right? So I could only control my decision to apply, and from then on, loads of stuff just went immediately out of my control. And it's the same for any other applicant. You know, you can't control what questions come up in any admissions test. You can't control what comes up in the interview. You can't control whether you're feeling well enough at various points in the process. You can't control whether or not you're distracted by something going on in your personal life. There's loads of things that you can't fully control, and they may have an impact. And given how competitive it is and how tiny the margins are between being offered a place and not being offered a place, the idea that is it wholly your fault is just not the case. Okay, so I don't no longer blame myself. The second most common reaction to being unsuccessful in applying to Oxford or Cambridge is it's all the university's fault. Now, fair enough, no admissions process for anything competitive on earth is perfect, right? Because if you're trying to gauge not only someone's talent now, but their potential in the future, which is unknowable, you know, it stands to reason that it can't be perfectly accurate. You just can't get it exactly right. But we put lots of safeguards in place to ensure that there is no discrimination on any grounds other than academic potential. In other words, we can't possibly discriminate against someone based on what school they've gone to, or anything terrible like discriminating against them because of the colour of their skin or their religion or sexual orientation. And we just can't do that. And we don't want to do that, but of course it would be completely illegal if we were. So one of the most important safeguards is that no individual can have control over the application that anyone makes. So it's even if someone harbours unconscious biases, they can't personally control the outcome of that process. They have to collaborate with colleagues. And it's a highly collaborative process. I can speak from personal experiences of having administered admissions here in Oxford. So there are lots of safeguards and checks in place to make sure that the only criteria we pick on are academic ability and academic potential. So again, the idea that it's the university's fault because they were targeting an individual is also just simply not accurate. It just wouldn't really be possible. The third reaction, which is that I was unsuccessful because it was highly competitive and there were lots of factors beyond my control. That's the truth, and that's the reality. And therefore, when thinking about how do we judge someone, what is it that we can actually sort of reasonably judge? It's the only part of the process that they had absolute control over was the decision to apply. That's the only thing we can reasonably judge about someone's application. And given that, that's the thing that people should be incredibly proud of, because even taking that step takes unusual guts and determination. And it also takes unusual capacity, right? Most people don't even have the capability of making an application because they won't meet the eligibility criteria. So taking that step to apply to a university like Oxford is extraordinary, and something that only a tiny proportion of the British population would even be capable of. So the idea that people that take that step and then subsequently don't have complete control of the process should be ashamed of themselves is quite absurd, I have come to realise. Now, it has taken me a long time because I sort of imbibed all of that sort of cultural nonsense about, well, if you ever fail, you should never admit it and you should hide your failures from the world and, cower and pretend like nothing ever happened. But I guess with the benefit of maturity, but also the benefit of having been involved with Oxbridge admissions, I know that I was just not looking at the situation clearly enough. And when it comes to sort of judging anything or anyone, you've got to focus on what someone could reasonably be responsible for. And the only thing that an applicant can reasonably be fully responsible for is the decision to apply in the first place. And given that I want to encourage more of you wonderful people to be entitled and empowered to apply, for goodness sake, don't go into the process worried about what might happen upon becoming an Oxbridge reject, because it's not a source of shame, it's a source of pride. You went for it, you had the guts, you stretched yourself, and you will have grown enormously from the process of applying, regardless of whether you're successful or not. I hope that makes sense. I hope it's helpful. Let me know either way in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much. Bye now.